All right. Welcome, everybody. Um, it's 4:30 a.m. here on the West Coast. Hopefully, wherever you are, it's not quite so early. Um, all right, let's go ahead and get started. This is an opportunity to speak with people who are a little bit ahead of you in terms of their process. They have gone where you aspire to go. Um, Jin Shao, we can start with you if you'd like. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to an MBA, what industry you were in, and what led you to decide to go down this path?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Jun Chao. I originally come from China. I went to my undergrad at University of Iowa. I studied finance. So I've always been passionate about the financial industry. So afterwards, I worked at UBS as part of the sales and trading team on the equity side, and also did a career switch into education. I spent 2 years as a GMAT prep instructor. So that really led me to get to know a lot of people who are pursuing MBAs. So that's the start of thinking about getting an MBA. And then my old boss went to Ivy, which is also a top Canadian MBA school. So it really came down to Ivy versus Rotman, two top Canadian schools. And Rotman really gave, obviously pre-COVID assumptions, really gave a really central location, downtown Toronto, the center of finance and technology. So that's long story short version how I got to Rotman for my MBA.
Okay, fantastic. Aravind?
Yep. So my background has primarily been in the technology sector, but I started my career working for the not-for-profits. So I was working with the World Bank project for about 3 years, and later I switched gears and I wanted to take a dive into the startup world. So I launched my own internet venture in India. So I ran that for about 5 years. Then we got acquired by a US-based firm, and later I worked with another startup for another 2 years before deciding that I was getting too comfortable with my life and I wanted to shake things up. So I thought, let me take a break, go to school, unlearn and relearn stuff, and then decide on what I wanted to do next. So that's why I basically chose an MBA.
Yeah. Before I go any further, I just want to let everyone know if you do have questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. We'll try to incorporate those questions as we move along, so this can be an interactive process with everybody. One of the things, so I did a session earlier today with someone from Columbia Business School and also Rotman. These were people from the admissions side of things, and one of the most common questions that people had, and Jin Chao, you sort of touched on this, is how COVID has altered the business school experience. And admittedly, for people who are applying now, it may or may not be the case that their experience at the school itself will be shaped in any way by that. But can you say something about how it's maybe changed your experience with the school, Jin Chao?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a very good question. So personally speaking, I'm also on the VP exec team at Rotman's Management Consulting Association. So we do see a lot of first year students that are experiencing this. So I think for us, because we went through our first year mostly in person, so there is a big difference. I think several things. Number one is the networking experience is completely different now. Everything's online. And then complicating that matter would be difference in time zones. People are in different locations. So that's a big challenge. I don't think anyone has come up with a perfect solution for that yet. I think networking has to be sort of trying to get the most out of the online experience. That's everyone's mindset. Number two, that's very different is the classroom experience. Personally speaking, I loved in-person classes, having a lot of really cool competitive people in the same classroom competing to answer tough questions. That's not easily replaceable by online classes, but personally, I've seen faculty at Rotman overall at U of T doing a really good job transitioning to online, at least maintaining the bulk of the stuff they want to teach. So I think those are the two things that really stood out for me. Brian.
Brian, I think you're on mute.
No, I'm the one with the audio questions. I was actually just saying, I said, I guess Grace had some audio issues before, and I think those are cleared up now. hopefully. So if you want to introduce yourself and a bit about your journey.
Hopefully you can hear me right now. Okay, I can first introduce my background. Before CBS, I worked for 4 years in investment banking in China, and I built up a startup in the clean tech industry for 3 years. Then I joined CBS because I want to change my career path from startup to some investing roles. Currently, I'm intern in Hill House Capital in Beijing. As for your question about the change in experience, I think there's one good thing and one bad thing of online classes. The bad thing is that, of course, everything move online, so you may lose some MBA experience. But the good thing is that you can have the opportunity to do a lot of virtual internships currently, and many of our students can currently pursue at least 1 or 2 internships while taking classes. It won't happen if you have to attend the classes in New York City. So I think there's good things to move everything online.
One of the interesting things about all of your answers is that it seems like that pursuing an MBA came at a point in your lives that was sort of like a pivot point, or it's I don't know how to say it exactly, like a trampoline for your like transformation or move to the next stage of things. In your experiences, how should people think about the timing of when they should pursue an MBA? And like, was this something you've been thinking about for a long time, or what are your thoughts generally about someone who's looking at this and saying, should I do this or should I not? Where do you think it fits within your life or your professional trajectory, Aravind?
Yeah. So I think before I answer this question, I think I just wanted to add a couple of points about the COVID impact, right? Because I didn't share a little about that. So being in China, CEIBS was one of the first school, that got impacted by this virus, because it was in January when, the Spring Festival time in China, the virus was, something people started talking about. And after Spring Festival, we were supposed to go back to campus after 1 week, and we never went back. Yeah, so we had like 2 months of nothing, where the school was trying to figure out what to do, and then we moved to online classes, and then we moved to a hybrid model because China kind of became uh, you know I wouldn't say immune, but became a much safer environment. So we started having offline classes. So students who were in China who managed to stay back here, they all could go back to campus, but the other students, they were taking off online classes. But for the first years, the ones who joined now, school actually has managed to find a very innovative solution. Like, we have a campus in Zurich. So all the international students who cannot come to China, they're all taking classes in Zurich. And all the students who are in China or who are able to come to China because of the restrictions, those people are taking classes in Shanghai. So we've kind of managed to have a little bit of offline experience for both sets of students. So I think that's something I wanted to mention. But let's talk about the timing part of an MBA, right? I think it's a very personal decision, something, you have to judge for yourself. But I think the factors what would go into deciding that decision is, you need to evaluate your journey until now and see what is it you're trying to achieve in the next step. Are you looking for some sort of a jump, or are you looking for a change, transformation, whatever it is? And then, based on these, I think you need to look at which is the school that can, or which is the course. I don't even know if MBA is the course, that you want to do, but you can decide on the course and school based on your personal journey and see where you want to go. I think that's what.
Xiao?
So personally speaking, I think I didn't really plan that much ahead of the curve when it comes to like MBA planning and when to go to grad school. I thought about going to grad school when I was still an undergrad, and I thought it's probably too early because I wanted some work experience before I decide on that. After I started working, there's a lot of, I think really big reason to push me into MBA. I think I see a lot of common threads when I talk to my people in my cohort is there comes to a point that you're developing your career, you want to take a pause, and then you want to take a step back and think about what you want to do long term. And then it's not sometimes possible when you're working full time. So I think that's whenever you come to that conclusion, that might be a good timing for you to pursue an MBA. That's the case for me. When I was taking the pause to think about exactly what I want to do long term, that's when the MBA discussion started popping into my head. So I think similar to everyone said, I think it's not it's very personal, and it's not something that that maybe follows a set formula that you have to do this at a certain time. I think that's contrary, like very contrary to that. Like MBA is very much self-exploratory process.
Grace?
And give you guys some statistics. For students in Columbia, or most big school in United States, MBA students almost have average 5 years work experience. And when you're recruiting, most of the companies requires you have a minimum 3 years of pre-MBA work experience. So if your experience is below 3 years, then you have to consider about it. You maybe encounter some difficulty in recruiting. And for some old senior MBA students, you also face some dilemmas because of the payment. MBA have very standard payment, so you have to consider about the pre-MBA and the post-MBA payment. If MBA cannot add value to you, you have consider about it. That's my opinion.
Okay. We have one of our viewers who asked, can you describe your experience of being an international student in your school? Zhenxiao, you want to start?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of broad when you talk about experience. I'm going to focus on two things. One is the career development. One is the social life. Toronto is a big city, and then University of Toronto is a huge school with a lot of international students. So overall, I think that's one of the reasons I chose Rotman as opposed to a US school, was looking at potentially working afterwards in Canada. It's relatively easier. So overall, international students experience very diverse activities that they can do. So in terms of career development, there's really no any significant obstacle that stops you from going to any industry. So I think that's one plus for me. In terms of social life, it's very easy to talk to people because when you hit a certain threshold of international students at a cohort, it's very easy to have that kind of quantity to quality change, that the entire mindset of a cohort is very diverse. So I think that makes the overall social life a lot easier. But not to say there's no challenges, because we're a bunch of very competitive MBA students stuck into the same room. So there's that competition component. But I think the overall experience as an international student at Rotman is basically, I can't ask for anything more than that. It's awesome.
Great. Aravind?
Yeah, so I think I will also structure it something similar to Jen Chao. Talk about my experience inside school and outside school. So inside school, I think CEIBS is a pretty international school. So we have around 40% students who come from different countries, and we have almost like around 35 countries in my cohort. I mean, that's a big number for a cohort which is only 180 students. So you can see that we have a very diverse group of students here. So I really don't feel like an international student or someone different, because you are part of this very diverse and very unique community, and you get to interact with almost everyone in your class. So experience inside school is really amazing. Everyone tries to make you feel part of the community. Like even the canteen tries to incorporate cuisine from different countries to make sure that we all feel, don't feel like we are being outsider here. And then let's talk about experience outside the school. I think Shanghai is one of the most foreigner friendly, or something, an international city in China. And again China in particular, I think, is a great place to come to. There's so much to learn here, there's so much happening here. I mean, the speed at which everything changes here is mind blowing. I mean, you can read lots of stuff about China, I mean, you can read magazines, watch videos, etc. But until you come here, you really don't understand, how much it is changing and how, this place is transforming. So I think that way I really feel, blessed to be here. This is a great opportunity to learn, and I would always encourage people to explore China. Yeah, that's my view.
Grace?
Because CBS is located in New York City, so actually you can almost get anything you want in New York City. And for international students, I don't have the figure. I think more than 50% of students in CBS are international students from all around the world. So nobody actually cares about your nationality. So we have a lot of gathering events that anyone can join. So it's really good. You can get very good exposure to the world. So I think you don't have to remember that you are an international student. I don't have this tag on me actually in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about the three schools represented here is that they really are, three very cosmopolitan cities, right? Toronto, New York, Shanghai. One of the things when you're applying to business school, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily come to mind at first. But I imagine that you guys had choices to make at some point when you likely got admitted to multiple schools. When you came to that phase of things, how is it that you decided on the respective schools that you chose? What were the things that you used to make that choice? And how would you advise someone who's going through a similar process in terms of figuring out from among options where they want to go? Aravind?
Yeah, sure. I've answered this question many times when people approach me about how you made this decision, right? So I mean, for me, it was very simple. I had three basic criteria on how I was selecting a school. The first was financial. So I was looking at ROI, looking at the fees of CEIBS is like 1/3 of most US schools, and when you compare the ROI, it made very clear sense that CEIBS was a great school to go to. And second was the economy. So I was looking at China as a very fast growing economy, and seemed like a choice that would keep me in pretty good stead in the future, right? I mean, I look at China as someone who's going to be one of the not one, probably the topmost economy or the biggest economy in the world in the near future. So that made sense to be here. And then the third was how it connected with my career goals or why I was doing an MBA. I wanted a challenge, and what better than to go to a country where I don't speak a single word of that language. So when I looked at all three criteria, for me, CEIBS made perfect sense.
Grace?
Yeah, when I just look for my MBA degree, I only look at schools in the United States. I only target the top 16 schools. We call it S16. And for me, I think location is a very important consideration because New York is very convenient, no matter in recruiting or in networking. Because during the recruiting season, you can just take the subway and then meet anyone you want. So of course, New York City is my top choice. That's why I applied to CBS in the early decision round.
Xinshao?
I think two things that I consider. One was my pre-existing experience. One was where I want to go next. I think Toronto stood out because I previously studied in the States before, so I wanted something that's different. But then looking forward, I want to be somewhere that's sort of the center of things, center of actions. And Toronto stood out as the intersection of technology and finance. So I was like, before I came into MBA, I had a really big idea plan, and that's always people talk about, like, I think question about has your career goal changed since you joined MBA? For me, definitely changed. I kind of switched from financial focus to consulting. But previously, when I was deciding on like where to go, I think Toronto stood out as that. I think similar to Arvin said, Grace touched on that too. Like the location part, I think is very important. And then secondly, of course, is cost. But my offers at the time, they had pretty similar values of scholarship, so that kind of helped me to eliminate that consideration. I don't have to worry about that anymore. So location really stood out as the one big key part. But obviously, pre-COVID assumptions.
Yeah, yeah. Just to follow up with you really quickly, I know that you didn't go to business school at the University of Iowa, but since you did your undergrad there and then you're now in Toronto, do you have a sense of, there are top business schools in the United States that are in like college towns, right? So like Duke comes to mind, for instance. Do you have a sense of ways that your experience might have been different by virtue of the fact that you were in a city, and is that something in retrospect that you're happy that you considered?
Oh yeah, I think you touched on a really good point, because Iowa City is a really tiny city, about 60,000 residents. So it's a very different experience. I think it's probably better for an undergrad to study in the college town as international students, because the pace is generally slower. I think very different experience comes from Toronto being a really big city. Everything moves very fast. People just don't have time to, kind of wait for you. I think similar to Shanghai and New York, people just don't have time to wait for you to catch up. So there's a lot of pressure for you to really, do stuff and catch up. So overall, I think overall it's a good thing for an MBA student, because you kind of have an idea where you want to go, what you want to do. So that's not that big of a problem. But if you're still a younger person, relatively early in your education, when you study abroad, it might not be the best choice to go to a really big city with a lot of competition.
One of the other things that you touched on that I'll open up based on a question here is Arushi asked, did you have a clear post-MBA goal in mind when you applied to business school? Did it remain the same as you began your MBA studies? Aravind, do you want to start with?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I came for an MBA, looking at changing my career path or to explore something new. So I didn't have a particular goal in mind, but I knew that I wanted to do something related to strategy. So I was looking primarily at consulting or working on the investment side as an investment in the startup world. So more on PE VC side of things, because that's where my background comes in handy. So I came here with those two options in mind. And after I came here, when I started talking to my classmates, some of the alums, and even professors, so I kind of zeroed in or moved towards consulting. So now I look at consulting as my first choice option. And for that, I'm now doing an internship with Bayer Business Consulting team in Shanghai. So I hope that this can take me on that path towards consulting. So that's how my career path evolved.
Grace?
I was trying to enter into the PEVC industry before MBA, and so that's why currently I'm in Hill House. But during the recruiting season, actually, everything can happen. I just got an offer from McKinsey, and I don't know whether where I have to go, because during the recruiting season, you have a lot of opportunities from school, the on-campus recruiting, and you are just drop your resume and you are going to interview, and you have a lot of opportunities. So you just have to compare. You did have a goal before MBA, but everything can happen. Yeah, things may change.
Jin Xiao, I know you talked a little bit about this, but you have something to add?
Yeah, I think I really agree with both of you, Grace and Arvind. I think a lot happens, and then pace sometimes kind of takes over everything. I came in with a focus on finance, and now I'm an intern at a boutique consulting company in the summer. And now I'm also very interested in technology, because there's a big startup culture in Toronto. So I think the one piece of advice I have to give to someone looking at MBA schools is don't be afraid to, don't lock yourself into a box. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and then you don't get to know it until you actually start your MBA journey. So I think keep an open mind is very important.
What did each of you hope to gain from your MBA experience? On a practical level, obviously it's like, a job, but like in terms of your skill set, your perspective, etc. What were your goals for your MBA experience, Arvind?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, for me, it was more about developing the personal side of things. So first was to expand my network. CEIBS has some great alumni network within China and outside China also. So for me, the goal was to forge, make use of this network and make some relationships out of that. And second was to kind of make some good friends here, right? So from my class, because these guys, I interact with them on a daily basis. I wanted to make some good friends with whom I can have a lifelong relationship. I think I've done that. So I'm pretty happy on that side of things. But otherwise, I also wanted to take a break and explore about my long term prospects, what I want to do in the long run. So this was, I was using this as a brainstorming ground. So I was talking to a lot of professors, a lot of alums, a lot of business leaders, trying to understand what makes them tick, what is it that gives them satisfaction, because I was kind of going in a slightly spiritual or an emotional journey. So I wanted to understand what matters to us in life, and what I need to gain 15-20 years down the line. I think I have the feeling that I have improved my understanding on those things, and I have a clear goal in my mind what I want to do for the next 10 years. So that's something I've achieved at CEIBS. Yeah.
Can I ask you a follow-up, which is to the extent that your concern or your goal was to kind of the personal side, and you mentioned that you had developed relationships and friendships. Has that been complicated by COVID? I guess you sort of feel like a lot of the relationships that come from business school, yeah, they happen in class, but it's also just kind of like, hey man, you want to grab a beer or whatever, right? Like you bump into each other in the hallway. Just kind of the social aspect that leads to
Yeah.
those connections. How has that been complicated for you?
So that has definitely got complicated, but as I again said, being in China has some sort of benefits for me in this space, that China, Shanghai especially, is now almost back to normal. Like, we have not had a case probably in some months, so we still go out. So I get to meet my classmates who are in Shanghai, so we get to go out, we catch up for a beer, we even hang out at school sometimes. But yeah, some of the students who are not here, we miss out on those people. But otherwise, I feel that COVID in fact actually helped forge better friendships. When this thing happened and we were all in China, so this was a very new experience for a lot of us, right? I mean, for almost everyone. But we were in China, and at that point of time, it felt like COVID was only affecting China, and we were all here at that point of time. So that actually brought us together. So we would all sit down, talk about how or what is how the impact is going to be on our lives, and how our MBA program is going to get affected. But after that got cleared up and Shanghai got back to normal, now we all are very thankful and very grateful that we got to stay back in China, and China has gone back to normal. So that really helps. And we all, in fact, even today lunch, we had a small gathering of friends where we all had a hang out for a burger and beer stuff. So I think that is something we are very grateful for.
Jin Shao, what were you looking for from your MBA experience?
Yeah, I think similar to Arvind, that going in, I had, I think different from him, that going in, I had a very clear goal of getting a job. Like, that's number one. I want to do something with my career, to pivot my career in some direction. But after I started my MBA, I think it's funny to say when you go to a business school, but it kind of feels like a philosophy or spiritual exercise. It kind of, because I think one of the reasons that I can think of is the pressure is so big, it's so competitive. You have to do a lot of self-reflection. I think that has a lot of benefits in the long term. So my goal has definitely shifted from simply looking at career to more of a holistic way of looking at who I want to be in 10, 20 years. Kind of that has ripple effects and implications on what I want to do. I think one quick example is how I switched. Like I initially thought about finance because that's my biggest background. That's where I spent bulk of my time working. But after talking to people, after experiencing a lot of activities, I realized startups, technology, scalable scientific breakthroughs, that's something that's even more meaningful for me personally. So that's how I pivoted my career focus towards that direction. I think there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on, which I think when you look at applying for MBA schools and choosing between MBA options, if an option can give you the opportunity to explore, I think that would definitely make that option stand out.
Grace?
I have 3 goals that why I want to pursue MBA. The first one is I want to realize a career switch. MBA is a very good opportunity for you to realize a career switch without reducing your payment. It gives you a second chance that you can enter from the median level, at least associate level, to a brand new industry. The second reason is that I want to have the alumni network. I think it's very valuable. When you enter into alumni network, actually, in your later career, you can have a lot of convenience. The third one is that I want to have a gap year because actually in the first year, MBA is very competitive. But once you got an offer in the second year, you can pretty have fun. So you can have a rest and think about what do you want to do later. That's the 3 reasons why I want an MBA.
So this has been a couple of references to the competitive nature of business school. Jianxiao or Grace, either of you, what does that mean kind of like on a concrete level in terms of do you end up viewing like the competitiveness as like a positive thing, or is it like a trial by fire, or is it how would you characterize that, and what does it mean like on a concrete level, in classroom? What does that look like? Jianxiao?
I would say it's an optional trial by fire. It's my way to put it. It's optional in the sense that you can choose not to make it very competitive, depending on your options, depending on how you structure your experience. But once you choose to, for instance, I think one good example would be in a classroom, you do have to have a really good performance. You have to participate. You have to crack the cases. You have to figure out how to get a high grade. So GPA definitely comes. It's a way to prove yourself, and then so that's definitely one example you can think of that makes things really competitive. I think another thing is just the overall environment, because you have a group of people who are either pivoting their careers or who come from very different backgrounds but bring very top-notch intellectual power and then very hardworking spirits. So it's inevitable that we have to run into situations where we have to compete. And last thing I think is just prioritizing different things. There are a lot of things that go on. You have to balance your social life, your academic work. You have to figure out what's the best career for you. So recruitment takes a lot of time. So that just to prioritize different things, that makes things kind of competitive. Overall, I think it's a positive because you probably don't get to experience anything like it if you don't go for an MBA program. It's very hard to kind of structure similar experience in your life if you don't join the top MBA program. So I think overall, it's a really good experience that can teach you a lot of things. As long as that's the mindset, overall, you can walk away with a lot of learnings.
Grace, you have thoughts on competition within business school environment?
In all the top big schools in North America, we all have great non-disclosure agreements with recruiters. So actually, nobody's gonna know your grades unless you get our offer. This is because our school try to encourage us to take the most challenging courses to explore new things. So actually, you don't have to worry about your grade. You can just take the course you want, either it's difficult or not, because nobody is going to know your grades. and you can hardly fail a course unless you didn't attend maybe half of them, over half of the courses. But it's actually pretty difficult to be put on the dean's list, but it doesn't that help you during the recruiting because no one knows. So don't have to worry about that.
Aravind, do you have any insight on the competitive aspect of things?
Yeah. So I think what Jenchao mentioned it makes a lot of sense. When people are pushing each other, I think that's when you improve a lot, and that's the kind of environment you have in an MBA. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Grace that grades probably don't really matter. But then, even in the classroom, the discussions when people are trying to, bring in their point of view, and sometimes these discussions turn into heated debates. These are the places where you actually learn the most. And when your classmates are trying to do different things, let's say there's a person who is the president of a club, and they're doing a certain activity, then if you are the president of some other club, then you try to push yourself and think that, let me try and do something for my club, do a different sort of activity. So all these things is kind of like a healthy competition, something that benefits the whole community. And this is a environment where you get rewarded for trying to experiment or trying to learn. So I think that's the best place where you can do mistakes, so you need not worry about making some mistakes or going on a different path, because the cost of doing a mistake is very small. But then if you try these things, you learn a lot. So when you do the cost benefit analysis, I mean, it makes no sense that you play a safe game. You have to take the riskier path in an MBA school, try and do different kinds of things, push each other. I think that's when you learn.
All right. We have a couple of questions for some of the individuals here. This one's for Jin Xiao, and it's from Big Shagya. I apologize if I Beshagaya. How is the job availability for international students in Canada? When do we get offer in hand?
It's okay. It's a broad question, so I'm going to answer in a very consulting way. It's both competitive and not competitive, in the sense that it really depends on what industry you're going after. I think there's a lot of jobs in technology startups. There's also a lot of jobs in finance, because Toronto is a financial center. It is competitive in the sense that you're competing with basically the brightest people in business schools. So it really comes down to what career paths you're pursuing. And then offering hand, if I understand correctly, I think normally for Canadian schools, the cycle is, if you're in consulting, it's a cyclical hiring cycle. Usually that obviously pre-COVID, usually September, October is the time when you have offers for full-time in your second year. For every other industry, it's mostly in the spring when they actually start the hiring season. So normally a couple months before and after your graduation date, that's when you actually look at full-time offers. Hope that answers your question.
Okay. And this one's for Aravind. Manoj Kumar would like to hear more about your core classes experience.
Yeah. I mean, for us, the core classes usually happen in the first 3 terms. So those are the terms when it is the most hectic. One, because you're not used to that environment, and second, because they're trying to overload you with loads of stuff. So you have academic stuff, then you have the social stuff, where you have all these mixers, parties, and other things. And at the same time, you have so many deadlines and assignments and so many things happening during that period. So it's very, very hectic. But core classes basically offer you the fundamentals or the foundations for most of the important subjects, like econ or finance, operations, marketing, data analytics, those sort of those sort of things. So core classes in CEIBS are usually taught by some of the best faculty that we have. So the learning experience is really good, and this is the time when all of your classmates are in the similar classrooms, because when electives start, then everything changes, right? Because some people choose one, some choose the other, so you really don't get to interact with everyone. But during the core classes experience, you interact with almost all of your classmates because they're all in a similar classroom in the similar setup and going through similar courses, similar assignments, everything. So I would say that that is one of the most memorable parts of my MBA, because after we finished our core classes and elective started, that is when COVID hit. So for me, core classes is probably more like the real MBA experience, because after that it became hybrid, where some people were in different parts of the world, etc. But yeah, that's my experience on core classes.
How did you go about planning out your curriculum after core classes? What were your thoughts on and how much flexibility did you have?
Oh, we have loads of flexibility. Like you can choose from, I mean, every term they offer like 15, 20 courses, and you probably only do like 3 or 4 courses in every term. So the choice is huge, and you can choose courses based on your career aspirations or what you want to learn. So for me personally, I was choosing all finance based or data based courses, because I wanted to learn the finance side of things, and I was very interested in data analytics and those sort of things. Whereas then there are some people in my class who would focus on digital courses, because China has so many startups working in that space, and potential is unlimited if you are someone who has an interest in that space. So it actually boils down to what you want to learn, and what is something that is going to help you in your career path. So that electives are we are offered almost every term. We have like a loads of options, so you can choose based on the professor, you can choose based on the rating, you can choose based on the schedule. So some people choose courses that are scheduled during the weekends, or some people choose courses that are probably overloaded and finish in a short period. So it's all very flexible.
And if I can follow up, um, did you think about this process in terms of you already had a sense of the exact directions that you wanted to take, or you used these additional electives as a way of figuring out and like honing the direction that you wanted to take your professional preparation?
Again, as I said, it's again a very personal decision, but there were many who were choosing electives based on where they wanted to go in terms of career. And then there were some who were just exploring different sides of things. I know a friend of mine, a French guy, who wants to start his own enterprise in China. So he was taking courses that would help him start up, would give him grounding. So he would choose courses like go to market strategy, or marketing research, or digital marketing strategy, those sort of things. So it all depends on what you want to do, and you have the choice to learn anything. So it's basically like the Coursera in real world. So you have almost all the options at your disposal. You choose based on what is important to you.
And Grace, I don't know how much of that you heard. I know you had some technical issues that booted you off for a second. But in terms of the flexibility in your curriculum, can you talk about that at Columbia, and also how you approached the question of which classes to take, in terms of either you knew what you wanted to study, or you used it as an opportunity to explore different fields that you might be interested in?
Yeah, actually, after the 8 core courses, you can take any electives you want, and you also have 6 credits that you can take from other schools, that engineering school or art school. So actually, you got a lot of freedom in choose electives. Uh, for the electives, most people will choose just to fit the courses that fit in your career path that can help you in the recruiting season. So basically, we actually have review system, a review website that all the previous students rate the professors and the courses. So before the bidding season, before we choose course, we usually go visit the review website and to see which professor have very good reputation, how is the workload, how difficult it is for you to get high marks. So we just review this and we start a bid. We have around 14,000 bidding points for the whole 2 years that you can use in the bidding. There are some courses that is really expensive that some like impact investing, and the most famous course in Colombia. So actually, you really have to balance that which courses you want to choose, that whether you want to all in that course. So actually, I don't have many recommendations for you. But just when you join the B school, or school will give you a lot of guidance about that.
Jin Xiao, do you want to add anything to that?
I think both of them touched on really good points. Core classes are required, so everyone takes the same classes. But I think for electives, it's really going after your interest and what the school has to offer. Each school has different specialties and expertise. So I think the electives will be a good opportunity for you to really plan out, really based on interest, because second years are almost more laid back.
A couple of questions for individuals here. So Swati asked, how has COVID-19 changed the job prospects at Rotman and CBS? We can go ahead and either of you can take that. CBS or Rotman. Grace?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Very low. Okay. What's the question? The question is about how the COVID-19 changed our recruiting, right?
Yeah, job prospects. Yeah.
This semester, all the recruiting are moved to be virtual. So all the interviews go virtual, as well as the campus info session. So you have to everyone have to get used to it. Just to get used to the Zoom interviews. But for some companies like Amazon, the interview process are all virtual, even without COVID-19. So actually, our school will give you a lot of training on how to present in front of Zoom. So you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. Xin Xiao?
I think there's good changes and bad changes. Good in the sense that you can look at a lot of different industries now because everything's virtual, like Grace said. The bad thing is there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think there's no final answer at this point on how prospects have been changed, because I think a lot of companies still haven't really started the full-time recruiting season yet. So all the students are taking a wait and see approach to network, to see what opportunities are out there, and then to see really how things go from here. So I think that's my take at the moment.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left, and so I guess we'll sort of do a little speed round. There are a couple of questions that some folks had about financing. Can you talk briefly about financing options, scholarship opportunities, and anything else that helps to offset the cost of an MBA? You want to start, Aravind?
Yeah, so CEIBS is, I think, one of the most generous MBA programs that I know of, because almost 30 to 40% of the class get some sort of scholarship. So CEIBS is pretty big on that. So if you are a good candidate, and if you have proven yourself in your career, or you have a very good reason as to why you want to do an MBA, and you can convince the admissions team, there's a very high likelihood that you will receive a scholarship. So I think that is one. And second, for financing, I think all the financing options that exist for almost all the top schools are there for CEIBS also. But mostly students go for Prodigy loans if you're looking to take educational loans. I think that's the financial options for when you're trying to come to CEIBS.
Xin Xiao?
I think very similar to what everyone mentioned, that one is scholarship. I know U of T is big on scholarship. There's a lot of scholarships, not just at Rotman, but also University of Toronto in general. And then I do know quite a few people who used Prodigy to finance their MBAs. So I think those are the two big avenues that's really worth spending time and thinking about.
Okay. Well, we're about at the end of our 15 minutes. I want to thank Aravind and Xin Xiao and Grace, especially Grace for battling through her technical issues. thank you guys for your insight. It's been really informative and helpful. I'm Brian Fobi at gurufi.com. If you have need of admissions assistance on your essays, etc., please check us out. And enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. It's going to be a bumpy one here in the US, but otherwise, have a great day. It's been fun.
Happy election day, Brian. I hope you get a good president.
Yeah. Well.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.